I think the people that have been in the game for a long time may be more resistant to learning something new, but also where you turn to learn something new as well. Welcome to another episode of Paving the Way pod with RF Paving. This week we are going to discuss, is the paving industry too resistant to change?
Yes, thank you, bye. I'm only joking.
So it's a bit of a twofold thing, this, isn't it? So I think there's a lot of different topics within that, whether it's materials, people. I think there's quite a big split between old and new. I'd say that the people that have been in it a long time are really good at the fundamentals, maybe a little bit resistant to new materials on the market or new systems, especially with like the ever-developing AI and accounting systems and things that are basically gaining traction in 6 months that might have taken 10 years before.
Yeah, I think that there is a little bit of resistance to change, but more often than not, rightly so. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a massive thing about the quality versus speed. Mm-hmm. And I think that, your old school landscapers, do things in a certain way which is fundamentally correct and are loath to sort of like change their processes if it means that it's going to harm the quality of the final product as such. I think you can find the things within the jointing compounds as such. For a particular example is that, people were and still are quite sceptical of certain compounds that are used for jointing for jointing the paving. And I think that yes, some people will sort of like say, oh, it's all right, it's quicker, this and that, but if it's not fit for purpose, then it's something that people could be quite sceptical of.
I think it's quite difficult, isn't it? Because if you make a mistake when you are landscaping a job, it is an expensive mistake to make. So a lot of what I hear is, especially when porcelain became more popular, is the landscapers that were used to laying stone all the time was resistant to changing the material to porcelain if the customer chose it.
Yeah.
I think one of the big things is that in a lot of industries, it's regulated that you kind of have to keep up your knowledge or practice over the years, where in our industry there isn't. So if you're used to laying stone and now porcelain's what your customer's choosing all the time, mm-hmm. that's really like a retraining method of how you lay porcelain. I think the people that have been in the game for a long time may be more resistant to learning something new, but also where you turn to learn something new as well, because there's not much available to teach someone in general, unless you're working under someone that's very good and you're learning your trade that way. There's not really anything specific to teach either old school traders or people new in the market correctly.
We quite often say about the learning and the industry standards as such, but it's like if you're a wagon driver, if you're an HGV driver, you have to continuously go on different courses, which, legislations change, rules change, everything else like that, keep up to it. Whereas, that is a profession, and it's a professional, you're a professional driver. This is a profession of, it's a unregulated.
We've said this, haven't we, quite a few times?
Quite a few
it's
times,
like you can't.
So I think if you start like said to people like you have to go and do this every year, like electricians or whatever other tradespeople have to do, then I think there would be a resistance to that. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing it for 40 years. Sort of like,
but when new materials come onto the market
exactly.
or new legislation, exactly the same as what drivers would be. So like you've got your legislation with SUDs, which we've already covered, and you've got things that come into practice, your materials, so resin bound systems that are permeable, mm-hmm. your block paving that's now permeable, your eco materials, things that weren't a thing 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's all the same fundamentals as if you were a driver that had to revisit those. It's, to me, it's technically the same because so much has come onto the market that it is a...
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you just said earlier on there, where do people go to learn about these things?
No, there isn't anywhere.
If they're not savvy enough to sort of embrace these new products, new systems, new laying, whatever they're doing, is sort of like there's nowhere to actually physically go and learn about it.
I think suppliers have got a bit of a role to play in that. I think that, like we've said a lot about doing the CPDs, and I think when it comes to new materials, new practice, new tools, having CPDs available, I think you should be able to go to your supplier and if you wanting to change what you do or open the doors to new materials, I think it has to come from your supplier as well, because your supplier is the one that's introducing these new materials to market, and they can give you a very good understanding about it. It's like priming slurry. Priming slurry didn't used to be even a thing,
No.
and people installed porcelain at the start without priming slurry, whereas now it's become a practice that priming slurry is used on porcelain and stone.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But if you spoke to someone that's been doing stone for 30 years, I'm sure that when they did it 30 years ago, it probably didn't need primer because they were putting a thicker bed on it, or they didn't have the time constraints that people have now. And that's another factor, because you're getting so many quotes and people are comparing against. It's like that race to the bottom. People are taking out key parts in it because the industry's forcing it, because they're not getting work if not. So it is a bit of a race to the bottom as well, which is a really challenging thing to overcome.
Yeah, and change is inevitable, unfortunately. You know, I think if people
Some
don't
people
embrace...
struggle with it, Andy. I am one of those people.
But if you don't embrace change, then you know you're going to get left behind in certain places. You know, it depends what, you know. Is the industry resistant to change? And I flippantly said yes. I think there's a lot of adaptive people within the industry now that are bringing new things to the market, new sort of like
new
processes,
tools, new techniques,
new expectations of you know. And I think we'll talk about social media, etc. You know, the expectations of what can happen within a landscaping project now are, well, they're higher probably than what they ever have been by just having a flat patio. You know, you've got all your different levels, different, you know, designs and everything that people are, you know, clever enough to do. So I think that, yeah, there are certain people within the industry that can bring this change to the forefront and hopefully change it for the better.
Yeah.
In the landscaping industry.
I think one big part of it is we're going to see a change in the next 10 years faster than we've probably seen a change in the last 50 years through AI and software developments.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a big thing that our industry may resist for a while, because even to the just normal human, it's a lot to digest that everything's going to change so fast.
Yeah.
But I think that is maybe when people do get left behind on efficiency or practices, because if you're not bringing AI into your business or increasing with your softwares, like the efficiency of it, if you are doing things a little bit old school, that needs to be considered now, because that is going to be the norm in 5 years' time, and it's going to change very quickly. So I think maybe the people that are resistant to change and the people that are more newer in the market, I do think there'll be quite a stark difference in terms of efficiency, because it's such a rapid change so quickly. And I also don't think that it's a bad thing to be resistant to change. If you've done something for so long and it's always worked, it's like, why would you? What's the saying? Why
you don't
don't fix something that's broken?
That's great,
yeah,
well,
don't. Thank you,
wow,
thank you.
got a saying right.
Pulled that out of somewhere.
Yeah.
And I guess that because modern day landscapers or people that are new in the industry have got so much time pressures, or they've got pressures across everything. That probably will make them speed up the process, and some of the fundamentals might be missed out, and then change isn't a good thing because you're not doing the job correctly. So that's a twofold.
But yeah,
thing.
it is again twofold. But yeah, like you say, you don't think you don't fix something that's not broken. But you can always enhance something that's already there.
Yeah.
And if that can make things that fundamental better.
Yeah.
Then change is a good thing.
I think there's definitely training missing within this, like somewhere where to turn. Like we can
yeah.
discuss it back and forth, but if there's nowhere that we can say this is where you'd go to develop new skills or want to learn more about a product, so you're not making those expensive mistakes which people will be scared to make.
I'll be able to question something and get the answer back rather than, no, that's rubbish, I'll never do that, that'll never catch on.
Yeah, I think suppliers, it needs to come from suppliers a lot, because especially when it comes to tools and materials, I think the tool suppliers can discuss about how the tools are modernising projects, making things faster, how you can use them. They often do open days and demonstration days in suppliers and builders merchants, which are great to go to, because that's, I guess, a form of training.
Yeah.
And I think when you bring in new materials into the market, so when we brought porcelain into the market, there was a big learning curve where people thought, oh, porcelain's slippy, it's for bathrooms, and changing the way that that's thought about and us promoting the practices of how you lay porcelain, that is a responsibility of ours.
Well, it was a big learning curve for us.
Absolutely.
When it first did become a thing within the market, it was like there's different handling processes, different laying processes, and passing that information on to the people who are actually installing is key.
I think a lot of modern landscapers or people that are getting jobs done now by any type of landscaper, I think there's a lot of pressure on sustainability as well. So with everything going on in the world, I think a lot of customers have more questions in terms of sustainability of product or processes, and I think that can be quite a difficult thing to navigate as well, because it's much more talked about now and there's much more alternatives.
Yeah.
But the education's probably not with the homeowners that don't realise that when you do everything in a sustainable manner, which you should do, but it's not always reasonable to do so, that can be a threefold cost.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not necessarily cost effective to
expectations of it.
Again, that if you've got people pricing, using people to price against each other, and there's one that is doing it sustainably 100%, whatever else they're doing, and then one that's not, then ultimately the one that is doing things in the best practices is going to be the more expensive quote of the two, but that's not always transparent within the quoting.
No, why? And that's why the race for the bottom comes in, because I don't think there's enough education for homeowners that are picking someone to do the work. Obviously, money is a factor that comes into everyone when they're doing a house project. So that is difficult, because you're not going to want to pay the top end. To be honest, most people that come into us and we discuss it generally say they sit about middle, but the amount of people, landscapers, people we work with day in, day out, that have to go and fix jobs because they have gone for the lowest quote. But again, it's a race to the bottom, because those people have had to cut corners because of it, and it's a difficult thing to...
It's hard.
It is a difficult thing to weigh up. So I think there's definitely a divide between people that have been in the industry years and people that are coming in new to it. Another thing is the expectations are different now. So if you are coming into the industry, learning, great at your job, but things like branding, social media exposure, your logos, those components are so much more important now than they were 30 years ago, and that's just because how much everything's evolved and things. So different focus is put on different areas.
The use of social media, massive, and to get the older person like myself, should we say, into social media as such is, it's going to be harder work, and if you're an established business, you are going to be resistant against change to be able to, because we've always done it this way, this is what we do. But I think that incorporation of the modern practices and the modern marketing tools,
it's important to keep up. I think
it's the only way that people can continue to go is because, like you've already said, it's always going to be a thing, and it's going to get more and more prevalent within every industry.
But it changes anyway. So, like, I am 33 on Wednesday, but we're still 32, but 2 more days. Instagram I'm fine with, but TikTok is a younger generation than myself. So I've had to learn TikTok. Wow. TikTok wasn't a thing for me. So TikTok's the platform that I would say I'm weakest knowledge on. And it's not necessarily just an age thing. Things can come out and they become really important on for the social media platform, and it can be new to everyone. I think for me it's important that your suppliers give you knowledge about new materials, companies that you go to for your tools or cutting materials, they should educate on the reason why new tools are being brought out, what the benefits are, the cost versus the benefits, and how that can help you on your jobs to cut the time but still keep your fundamentals. And I think everyone's got a responsibility to educate, because there is a gap of where people go to.
Have we already mentioned legislation? Because that changes.
Absolutely. But where would you go? Where do you go when, if you were a landscaper in this day and age and you were just starting, what would you do? Google what is the legislation that applies to me? Ask AI. There's nowhere
Probably,
actually. I know. It'd probably give you an accurate answer as well. But again, that's always changing. It's not someone you can hold accountable for. You can't go to a job and say, well, my AI app said that this is the legislation, and it's hard because it's not regulated. So I definitely think there's a gap there, and I don't think either's right or wrong, but I think it is. It's very different. I understand why people resist to change, because you need to have the education in there to be able to go to, else how do you change?
Yeah, but change is fundamental on people's development.
It is. I think it's how open you are to do it as well.
I think so indeed.
No, challenge yourself.
Challenging yourself is massive, to be quite honest. If you can challenge yourself to learn something different, then you are going to be naturally doing that change.
But I understand as well, because like even as you get a bit older, life is so full on and busy. I understand the people that say, I've done it for this long, I'm good at what I do, I don't need to know anything else, I don't want to learn anything else. That's fair enough. They can stick to the jobs that they want to do, they know how to do, and they're comfortable doing. So
indeed.
yeah.